of course our growing family on Instagram and YouTube. I'm the host, Esty Klaassen, from the First Time Homebuyer Show. And as you've seen, the show is new and improved, and we still need you to help us take it to a new level. As you know, the stories shared on the First Time Homebuyer Show are about driven and motivated and optimistic stories, and we want to continue that. In the past, we've had stories from township living to suburbs, from doctor to property magician, and we want to keep hearing those motivational stories. And if you know anyone, we'd like you to tag them in the comment section below, and they could be the next guest on the First Time Homebuyer Show. Do the right thing, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Good evening and welcome back to the First Time Homebuyer Show. As you know, I'm your host, Esty Klaassen. This evening, I'm chatting to the absolutely amazing Papa Boachie-Yiadom, also known as Papa Biz. So if you don't know yet, please do follow us, like us, and subscribe to all our channels. That's Private Property SA or just Private Property. Every weekday night, you have Zama on the Private Property podcast at 7 p.m. Every Tuesday and Thursday, you have Mbali at 8 p.m. Then she's talking about farming, agriculture. If you want to dibble your fingers into that, do catch Mbali. And of course, every weekend, it's Chad with the Home Shopper Show at 7 p.m. as well. Are you shopping for your perfect home? Well, be sure to catch that. And without further ado, I am sitting with the absolutely amazing Papa Biz. Good evening, Papa Biz. How are you?
I'm excellent. So glad that you could have me here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time out, inviting us into your space. We are in Papa Biz's home right now, and we're going to talk a little bit about property, a little bit about all these awards on the wall. And I'll do the introduction a little bit later, but I'd like for Papa to please introduce yourself to the viewers and just explain about your journey, how you got here. I know you're from Kimberley, moved to Pretoria, came to Joburg. How was that transition like for you?
No, cool, thanks for that. So I'm Papa, popularly known now as Papa Biz, because myself, my journey's actually been quite different. I'm originally from Ghana, and our family, we came here, my parents were both teachers, and then we came to South Africa, must have been 88, so it's been quite a while. And we came through, studied, was raised in Kimberley. That's where diamonds come from, so yeah, up there for Kimberley. And yeah, just through following the journey as well, came to study at Pretoria University. I studied actuarial science there. And after that, actually moved into corporate, where I was for quite some time. So I was in the banking space for about 10 years, where I was, when I ended, I was a vice president there in the home loans environment. And yeah, it was just something that I enjoyed quite a bit, but at the same time, I'm married, and when my wife and I, when we got married in 2010, we actually started looking at what we'd like our future to look like. And one of the things that happened is we started looking, we had this passion for entrepreneurship. And in that passion for entrepreneurship, we started a business, which was a clothing business. So, and that grew over time. My wife at the time, she was also head of her department at a merchant bank. And what happened is that we grew organically. We had that entrepreneurship bug. But there was a point where we had a physical store. Then we had 2 physical stores. And then my wife was actually able to leave the corporate environment. And what happened after that is we got to a point where we had, I think it was about 4 or 5 stores. Then I was also able to leave my corporate environment. And so, yeah, we've just been pushing through with entrepreneurship, but also just keeping a keen eye as well when it comes to property. And I guess that's how one is able to connect then with somebody like yourself, which relates to a more property discussion, yeah.
Right. So the transition from going from corporate, both of you and your wife have gone from corporate, a very safe environment where no, we're going to get a fixed salary, to working for yourself. Was that not scary somehow, that my business or my company could just fall flat, or I might not get funding, or I might not have enough of my own income to support this business? And then because I know you work for one of the biggest banks in South Africa,
yeah.
And then you just leave that and go run your own, follow your dreams. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think that with what I've seen with entrepreneurship, because I like to read a lot, and one thing that's quite clear is that there's no fail-safe way to go into it, and it's generally in terms of where your spirit wants to take you. I mean, one thing that I definitely experienced when I came into full-time entrepreneurship is I got to see that it is true that as a full-time entrepreneur you are able to sleep like a baby, which means you wake up every 3 hours crying. And that was something that we all understand as entrepreneurs, but it's part of the journey just to understand as well, and in terms of where your desires and what your dreams are pushing you towards. I know with us, we try to make it a bit more, instead of like just jumping into it, we try to take a bit more of a measured approach, where we were trying to ensure that our business always had systems in place. And of course, we didn't know everything at the time, so we'd read a lot of books, engage with different mentors. And a part of that journey led us to, delaying, our exits from corporate, because at the time when we were there, these were serious roles that we had. So it means that you pretty much engaged throughout the whole day mentally with your full-time job. And now you're trying to do something else on the side. So we really didn't have a lot of time. But then the approach that we took was, let's try and play it a bit more safe. And that's why, my wife first left only after we had 2 stores. So it wasn't immediately after the first store. And then I also left after we had quite a few more, just that we'd have that bit of a buffer.
Yeah, and stability almost, because if you had left straight after the first one, you can never guarantee that it's going to continue to grow and grow. And it has. You've run your own company for about 9-10 years as well?
Yeah, it's been quite a while now.
Yeah. Okay, so I just question to the viewers is, as we can hear, Papa Biz has followed his dreams and he's taken that step to follow his dreams. What would you say are your biggest fears holding you back right now to just leave that corporate space and go fully into one of your dreams, or property, or investing? What would you say is holding you back? On that note, Papa Biz, what inspired you to go into property?
So, with myself, like I'm saying, I like to read a lot. And one of the books that really impacted me that I read, I don't know if you guys have heard of that book, it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So that's by Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. Because, for my background as an immigrant, a Ghanaian immigrant into South Africa, immigrant families, especially Ghanaian families, they're very focused on, you've got to study, then study better than everybody else, then go into a corporate environment. Now you're in that job for 45 years and that's it. And now what we were looking to do was slightly different. So now as I was reading through, one of the things that kept being spoken about was, property and passive income. And there were different concepts that were being spoken about, and I couldn't really see that in South Africa. But then I read another book, it was called Unfair Advantage, also by Robert Kiyosaki. And what he wrote there was that part of the key to wealth, or he found allowed him an unfair advantage, is that him and the wife, they invested time and money in non-tertiary education, non-schooling education. And they spend their own money on that. And because they did that, it really allowed them to have an unfair advantage over other people in the roles that they were doing. And after I read that, we actually took 2 courses. The first course was around social media marketing. This was years ago. And that made like a huge impact in our business. That was a course that was overseas in America. It was online, and it just taught how to market on Facebook effectively. Because I kid you not, we did that course, and at the time that we did the course, and I just want to let the viewers know, at the time that we did the course, I remember in our business we had 10,000 followers in our Facebook page, and then 6 months after we did that course, we had 100,000 followers on the page. And what I found now is that, my wife, she's quite passionate and she teaches around the things that we've learned and things like that to help other entrepreneurs, and I get busy with other things. But then just to answer your question around property, we also took a course on property as well. I'm just more reserved, so I've always taken the approach to get educated, and then it also helps me realize that the risk is always there, but once you have the education, you can actually see now this is a calculated risk. This is not a risk that you're taking where it's going to lead you to financial ruin. So we took a course around property, and then we also got a mentor. We spent quite a lot of money on both of those, but it really helped us, guide us, so that we could see what we were doing was going to make sense for the future, and that we wouldn't get our fingers burnt.
I love what you said about non-tertiary education and kind of using or doing little short courses that can grow your own business, and that you don't need to look back, especially in South Africa. Everything is NQF levels and all of these things, and if it's registered with SAQA, and then you're like, but still you're working for corporate once you've gotten your degree, or you're working for someone else.
Yeah.
I've always been so skeptical about that.
Look, I think whenever I read, I argue a lot with the authors.
Yeah.
Some of the things, vehemently opposed to them. But it changes your mind just to think, okay, they did that there. What's the type of equivalent that we maybe could do here in South Africa or in my space? I remember I remember a quick example where there was a story being told about how to get into retail spaces. And in that story, I remember that we were trying to get into the malls for our business, and they kept declining, and actually they weren't even responding. And it was a different type of scenario that they were speaking of, but it gave us the idea. And what we actually did is we followed through and we sent our application through to one of the malls that we had struggled to get into. It was in Polokwane. And we sent our proposal in a red envelope. Have you ever received something in a red envelope?
No.
Yeah, so precisely. So we did this, and it was quite a mission to find somebody to sell you red envelopes. Only 10 of them, because usually they say you got to buy like 1,000 or something.
Yeah.
And we sent the application, told them about our awards and what we've done. We want to be in there more, and we put it in. And I kid you not, the next day they called me.
You're joking.
The next day they called me, and the lady said, "Wow, I got your proposal, and I'm so excited. What space do you want? How can we help you?" And I thought, this wasn't exactly what was explained in the book, but because your mind gets stretched, and then you start saying, how can I apply what they're talking about here? And it's the same thing with property. There's a lot of things that they discuss in those books where even South African law doesn't actually allow that. Right. But it forces you to change your mind and think, but what can I look for here? A very practical example, I remember reading him talking very specifically about cash flow positive properties. That's what he focused on. And when I used to go to estate agents to say, this is what I'm looking for, especially in the area that I was living in at the time, because I used to live in Pretoria, they were saying, but this, what you're talking about doesn't exist. What you're talking about, where this doesn't exist in South Africa. And it was only up until I found some, because I kept saying, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I read about in the book. This is what I'm looking for. And when I found somebody who showed me that I knew, but this is exactly what I've been looking for, then I don't have to hesitate. I can move forward.
Right. And back to your red envelope example, I started doing that when sending emails that I really wanted to be read. I started making the subject something that was like absurd, because that's something they click on. So it's about creating this thing that, especially if you want someone to read it or want someone to accept your proposal, and a lot of us these days are trying to start up our own business, and that's a beautiful example. If you want to be accepted or have someone read your work, whatever it may be, just look at different ways.
Robert's books, they're poorly written from an English perspective, but they're such easy reads.
Right.
They're quick, easy reads, and it allows you just to have a different mindset about what you had before. And that's very important, because in entrepreneurship, and we touched on it before, where being a property investor or entrepreneurship, there's that link. And it is required, because we're not taught to think this way in school. Because we're not taught to think this way in school, we do have to invest the time in ourselves to gain that knowledge, whether it's reading books, taking short courses, and so on and so forth. And sometimes you'll take a short course and it doesn't actually answer everything that you want. That social media course that we took for Facebook, look, 80% of what they taught in that course, we couldn't use it.
Right.
But that, you see, that 20%, it made the difference.
So, Papa Buzz, one of the main reasons I was so excited to do this chat with you was because on Instagram, you're so transparent and authentic when you do your lives, when you do conversations with people on Instagram, and you talk a lot about how when you first got into the game, you also felt like you heard these terms and different types of jargons, and you were just like, but I don't know what this means. And as a beginner or first-time home buyers who were watching the show, we're feeling a little bit inadequate when we go into the space, even when it comes to transfer duties and all these things. And we're just like, what is this? And one of the main things you spoke about was a power team. So you had no idea what this meant when you first heard it. What was that moment like when you first heard it? Where did you hear this term, and how was it explained to you?
Well, actually, I read it in, it's actually Jason Lee's book. So Jason Lee is a South African author where he talks about making money through property in South Africa. So So it's almost like taking what is gained from these international authors like Robert and making it more relevant to the South African market.
Okay.
And when I read it, it was very foreign. It's like, what's a power team? And the only way that I got to relate to it eventually was that, this is a tribe. This is a tribe of people or a network that will help me and anybody else along in the property journey. And also it's about relationships, because sometimes you'll use different professionals and you realize you don't gel with that person and then you need to move on. So I got to see that I don't need to be afraid that I don't have the most complete tribe, but it's also just starting, just so that you understand. Things things like having an agent, somebody who sources you the most appropriate deals or targets that you're looking specifically for, to say, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help me along with that? That's somebody that can be used as part of your tribe. Somebody who, let's say, is a conveyance attorney. That's if you want to be doing investing and going to more properties. That's somebody also good to have in your tribe. Something very simple. For instance, if you want to buy a place and you want to do some renovations, a plumber or a builder, that's somebody who's part of your tribe. And so it doesn't need to be that complicated. And for me, look, I've read a lot when it comes to entrepreneurship and property. I listen to a lot of podcasts around property specifically. And one thing I've just realized, that it's actually important to share. It's important to share in an authentic way so that people can understand. Because I had to go through that as well, where, I'm an educated person, corporate background and so on. And you'd think that, okay, I can just do property because I'm educated that way, but it doesn't work like that. One also needs to invest time getting educated in property. We spent a lot of money to do that for ourselves, and I was surprised how little I know, but I was also surprised how little the general market knows. And that's also one of the reasons that they're quite hesitant, that I found some people, they're quite hesitant to get into property. Because the way that they've gone into it, or the stories that they've heard, the obvious questions that come through is about, what about if I don't find a tenant? What about the most horrible tenants? What about the right area? How do I know if I'm buying it at the right price? Should I have this in a company or in my personal name? Does it actually make a difference? Where do I begin? And that's where the journey began for me, to say, let me help people. Let me share what I've learned. I've actually gotten, I've gotten quite a few mentees now that I'm mentoring around property. I've obviously got my own business that I focus much more on. So I don't usually have like a lot of time and to take on a lot of mentees, but I do make time with those that I assist. And it's, I find like it's a win-win, because I'm seeing where there are people that are some of my mentees that actually bought quite a few properties. And then when we start discussing how it was done and the way that I've learned and what we're applying, they then start to see, oh, okay, they've made a few mistakes, but it can be corrected. Because for me, one thing that's always important is, I don't know if you've seen, and also for your audience, is that this idea that making a mistake is bad, for me, like, that's a bad idea. Okay, because sometimes, you need to make mistakes just to be able to learn what's important to move forward. And sometimes, if you really want to avoid those mistakes, find a mentor, get more educated around property, so that you can be assisted along the way, and that you don't have to make the mistakes that somebody else has made.
Off the top of your head, if you're allowed to share, what were some of the mistakes your mentees made?
Okay, well, some of the mistakes, that would relate to, it's just in terms of picking the correct strategy. Yeah. Because sometimes, somebody will say that they want passive income, they read about these things, then they go and buy, for instance, let's say they'll go and buy in Sandton or something of the sort. And then you find that, but they're paying more for the place. There's money coming out of the account every single month just to have this place, because the rent does not cover the bond and the levies and the rates, etc. And then you realize, okay, it's good that you want to get into property, but your goal was to get passive income. Yeah. So what you've done now with property does not speak to your goal. Because let's get it very clear, what are the goals? And then I help them to even showcase what we were able to do, because my focus is always around cash flow positive properties from day one. This is what I told the estate agents in the beginning. This is what I was looking for. I want places where there's money coming into my account after all the expenses every single month from day one. Show me that.
Yeah.
And that's where most of them, they said, well, what you're talking about doesn't exist. You need to wait 2-3 years before the rentals have gone up enough, and then it will cover your bond and your rates and things like that. And it took me a while, and then I got a mentor, and he was able to guide me. And that was the approach that we took, yeah.
And today you've reached your goal?
Yeah, so I mean, we can always grow bigger.
Of course.
But I'll just give you a quick example. So I went to a presentation where my mentor was presenting to a group of investors. I think we were about 100 people in the room. And then he spoke about these, his journey and cash flow positive properties and where one could get that. And I was very intrigued when he spoke about that. The room was mixed, black, white people, colored people, Indian people, everybody was there. And he said, I've got this opportunity now where there's 40 units available in one building, where they're all cash flow positive from day one. If you want to view, I've only got like 20 left. If you want to view, then come along on Saturday and you guys can view what's available. Now, the thing that I found disconcerting is that I went to view. Now, remember I said that the room was mixed, right?
Yeah.
When I got there, we were about 10 people. I was the only black person.
Wow.
I was only a black person who was there. And I looked at this and I thought, but where are we? Where's everybody else?
Right.
I mean, why didn't they? I mean, the guy spoke. Where is everybody? And I looked at the building. It was decently maintained. And I thought, but this is exactly what they've spoken about in the books. So I said, yeah, we're in. And when we did that, that was about 5 years ago. I regret it now because we bought only 4 units. So at the time, the bank was prepared to give us, they would have allowed us to buy like 20 units, you know, but we only bought 4 units because also we were a bit, cautious. And when I look back at it, I'm just thinking, wow, what a deal. We should have actually taken more. We were overly cautious even ourselves because what he presented, it's true. And that's what I've looked to expand on in my journey and my strategy. And that's what I look to share with other investors and mentees and things of the sort. Because often, I'll make time and I'll do property walks where we do walks and tours around what are these cash flow positive properties, how to identify what's good, what to avoid, and what to pay attention to and things like that. And it's something that I enjoy doing because people need to know. I know that not everybody, it's especially around mentorship, not everybody's going to connect with you. And like with my mentor, not everybody connected with him. Maybe that's why they didn't come through. And I've also accepted not everybody's going to connect with me. Yeah. I mean, I know I can't make everybody happy. I'm not Ghanaian jollof rice. Okay. So I do understand that, and I just try and share and make sure that people receive the message and they're able to do with it what they want there afterwards.
Why would you say that a lot of people didn't go? Do you think they were too cautious, or do you think that they felt like they were being sold dreams? Because in all honesty, I don't think I would have gone.
Look, I mean, it depends on how much time has been invested in one's educational journey, specifically around property. And what strategy you're looking for, or what your goals are, and it does honestly depend. I found it interesting because the opportunity that was presented when I went, we're able to view, and I was like, but these numbers make sense. But these numbers make sense, and since then it's been my mission where I'm like, guys, listen, please pay attention. Yeah. I know you live here in Randburg. I know you're living here in Pretoria and so on. So when you think property, then you're just thinking in your area and your surroundings and things like that. But where you're at is all you're seeing is risk. And if you get more educated around property, just humble yourself a bit. Yeah. Humble yourself a bit. Get some knowledge around property. Then you can see now you're taking more of a calculated risk.
And a lot of your awards speak to entrepreneurship, and I love also you're always wearing your brand, and I want to get to that because when I was studying, I was taught that I, as Esti, I'm a brand, and you wear your brand, you speak your brand, you act your brand. So what would you say Papa Biz's brand is?
Look, what I'd say the brand that I'm developing, it's authentic, and connecting with the aspirant investor, corporate person, single mother or parents, or even a retiree, and somebody who's just aspiring to get into property, but in the correct manner. So that's what the brand is, just in terms of authenticity and sharing. Especially because for me, what's very important to me is that sharing is caring.
Yeah.
And I'm not somebody who looks to keep all the information to myself. We all need to grow as a community. And I always try and make sure that I don't use jargon that makes people feel even more uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Because I do find that quite a lot. Look, I mean, in getting educated, you do have to know, you'll learn things, the numbers, how to do the calculations, what to measure, mistakes to avoid. One of the most common ones that I've found, especially when somebody's looking to get involved right in the beginning, is maybe they'll just look at the bond repayment amount, and they'll look at the expected rental that they're going to get.
Yeah.
And they think, cool, this is great.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to look at what else. There's maintenance required. Some places there's levies and rates and all types of different things. And if you buy, let's say, a standalone house and it's got a gate, I mean, if that motor breaks, that's an extra, 5,000-6,000 rand that you need to replace. So it's just making sure people are aware and that they're taking a more calculated risk.
Nice. I want to go back to the Wall of Fame. I keep pointing to it. And most of the awards are linked to entrepreneurship and business. So let's talk about that link between entrepreneurship and property.
Cool. Yeah, no, so what I find is that they're both very linked because as an entrepreneur, especially when you're a full-time entrepreneur, you are in charge. It's different to like when you're in corporate. Everything really is, you have to be fully immersed, and you need to understand you are in charge. So you can receive advice from different people and so on, but you are the one who needs to make the decisions, and the buck stops with you. And that's what I found where, like, even for us to grow in our business, we needed to humble ourselves, learn from others, introduce systems, then bring in systems that were better than those systems and things like that, and just to grow. And also to understand that it's not what we're growing. It's not actually just about us, but it's for our client base, the receiver. So are we creating something that will solve a problem? And if we're not creating something that will solve a problem, then we're not going to earn any money from that. And that's what I've found quite strongly with entrepreneurship, and it's actually the same with property.
Yeah.
Often we'll find when sometimes like investors, they'll book me for a property viewing where they're viewing a place and they've asked if I can come along and give them my views and things like that. And you'll find that I'm having to explain, look, you're looking at this place as if you want to live there.
Right.
This is not for you to live in. Who's the target market for this place? What is important to them? What value can you add for that target market that's going to live here?
Knowing your client. And then they start to see, okay, this is what I need to put in place. This is what will make sense. This is not for me to live in. And then it just helps them along the way in the decisions that they need to make as well. Yeah. And you also talk about house hacking. And that's especially for newbies, and I'm in the same boat as a first-time home buyer. On the journey to invest in property. And for me, I'm not originally from Joburg, so if I'm looking to buy property in Joburg, it's definitely not for me. It's not where I'm gonna raise my family. No, I'm looking for the client. So what would you say is another house hack or buying property hack?
Okay, look, I think there's lots of different strategies in property. I mean, when last count that I did, we documented about 17 different ways to, and it depends what a person's goals are.
Again, yeah.
So it's different. I think in that episode I was just talking specifically about one strategy around house hacking, which basically is in our language is just subletting.
Oh, okay.
But making sure that you do that with permission of the owner and in the right area, in the right pricing, where you can actually make quite a bit of money. And for me, I share these things so that people can know what the options are and that they're getting educated around this. Because sometimes people get pushed into a specific cocoon. Yeah. And you're thinking, but this doesn't actually speak to the goals that this person has got. What are your goals specifically? And then I just look to guide appropriately. Yeah.
So in one of the shows I did, right, one of our guests spoke about investing in property is not as difficult as we think it is. We need to start creating habits, whether it's waking up in the morning and going straight on private property's website and finding a house or finding something. So creating these habits. What would you say are your habits or traits that's become a ritual almost for you within the property and entrepreneurship road?
Well, for me, it always depends. Like, I like to start my mornings appropriately, so you can ask my wife. I wake up early, maybe I'll just read a book. And then I got to start off with getting myself physically well. So then I'll start off either at the gym or I'll do some boxing, things like that, just clearing my mind. And then just, starting the day just with notes and lists in terms of this is what I actually want to achieve, and then identifying what's the most important thing that I need to do on this list. Because I don't want to get drowned in lists. And as part of those habits, it is actually important where you'll check the websites, perhaps engage with people in your tribe, people that bring you deals and things like that, to say, hey, have you picked up anything that makes sense? Please let me know. Making time in the week to go and view. It's interesting. I find sometimes I've had somebody before where I engage with them and they're very reluctant to spend any time on viewing.
Right.
And I think, but what you're missing here is that I know you do it because I've done it. Sometimes you go to the mall and you do window shopping. You're only going to buy like in 2 months' time or something, but you're doing all this window shopping in all these different places before you actually make the purchase, because you're trying to determine, am I going to get value for what I'm going to be spending on? And it's the same thing like with property. Sometimes viewing doesn't actually mean going and viewing the specific property. It also might mean viewing what's available, even on private property and things like that, just bookmarking them. And something that I do as well as a ritual before I'll even go and view, I'll put it into my spreadsheet.
Okay.
So I've got a spreadsheet on my phone. It's a model that I've developed just to see, do these numbers make sense? Is it worthwhile going to view? And only if it looks worthwhile on paper will I say, hey man, I'd like to view this place. Some of the places it makes a lot of sense to me. Some of them it doesn't make sense. And then some of these things that they get passed on to other investors, because I've got like a wide network of people now where they ask me for deals and things that make sense, and then they ask me to manage the places because they're quite busy. These are busy professionals, and that's something that a service that I've added now, and I'm more than comfortable for that, just to give a peace of mind. And then we grow together, and that's now forms, because now they also now form part of my tribe.
Right.
And you see, that's how the tribe keeps growing.
Back to the tribe, yeah. What would you say? So this is a question I ask all my guests on the First Time Homebuyer Show. What does home mean for you?
Home is it's where the heart is. It's for me. It's where it's the space that I'll come to where I can feel most comfortable, and it's like this is my space. This is the place I'm prepared to invest time in and bring people that are dear to me to come and share in that space, and just where I'm able to just as well just expand my mind and my mindset, because like I said, these are the places that I'll find that I'm reading and things like that, and also just connecting obviously with my wife, and it's like our space, our shared space together.
Yeah. Papa Biz, thank you so much. I think we ran out of time, but just before we go, I'd like for you to leave just a little bit of a message for the viewers, people who are first-time home buyers, people who are afraid to invest in property, where the jargon is too scary. What bit of advice would you leave with them today?
I think what I'd leave is just to say, don't get overly daunted. Especially, I understand some of the terminology can be quite difficult as well. But actually invest in educating yourself. It's not that difficult. There are books that one can read, there are podcasts, and also grab a hold of a mentor. In the beginning, I used to think, now I've got to spend money on a mentor and things like that. But suss out who you connect with, who resonates with you, and have them walk a journey with you, because honestly, like that can save a lot of money and a lot of pain later on. And what I've come to see actually is that anybody can get involved as long as you invest the time in getting educated, so that you make the right decisions. Yeah.
And just the other day, actually, I was speaking to a dear friend of mine when I was like, but mentors are a little bit pricey. Like, what do I do? I don't even have that money yet. I want to save for my property. And he actually said, invest that money in a mentor, because as soon as that mentor helps you and guides you to get the correct investment, you make that money back in like the first few months.
Yeah, I mean, just to make it clear now, this will be just a parting shot from me, because somebody asked me about this, and it's like, how do you know if this is a good investment? Because they're looking at this and say, I want to buy this, is it a good investment? And for me, it's like, I don't know if it's a good investment. Are you a good investor? Because a good investor is somebody who's actually educated around investing. Otherwise, you're going to be led astray by somebody who just wants to make a commission of you. Have you spent the time to get educated around this topic? Has somebody mentored you around this topic so that you can understand, oh, but this property makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's something that's very important for me. There's no good or bad investment. There's good or bad investors.
Yeah.
And that depends on the amount of education and time that you've spent to get educated around whether it's property or business or things like that.
I like that. I'm gonna end it there. To our first time home buyer viewers, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And I think that sums it up absolutely lovely. It's not about having a good or bad investment. It's about, are you a good or bad investor? Thank you so much. Catch us every Wednesday night live at 8 p.m.